Hello and welcome to City at a Glance. I'm Kelly DiMartino. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the High Park fire and some lessons that were learned during that experience and also the current status of the recovery efforts. As always, we're pleased to have joining us City Manager Darin Atteberry. Darin, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kelly.
Today we have with us Fire Chief Tom DeMint. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Kevin Gertig, who is with Fort Collins Utilities and oversees our water operations. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
And we're also pleased to have with us Larimer County Sheriff Justin Smith.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So the fire has been a few months ago now, and that was a time that was just kind of unprecedented in our community's history, I think, in terms of the scope of that event, and has had certainly some lasting implications. So we wanted to start, Darin, by you maybe just kicking off for us a little bit about what, from the city's perspective, it was like when that was going on, and then again, how important the partnerships are that we have with all of these folks around the table.
Yeah, well, thanks, Kelly, and I appreciate having a chance to kind of debrief this issue, and I know that you'll hear a lot about what went on and now what's happening. And I had a counterpart in Virginia email me the other day, and he said, I hope things are going well with the fire, and he knew it was out, and boy, wasn't it nice to have that over. And I thought, it's not over. We're going to be dealing with this potentially for, what, Kevin, 2 to 10 more years from a water quality watershed standpoint. So it's nowhere near from being over, and I think it's important to keep that in front of people, not the devastation, but the recovery. And so, you know, I mean, it was a significant event, and I think people will really benefit from hearing from the sheriff and the fire chief. And you know, as we start into this, I want to just tell all three of you guys, I so much admire your work. I think your professionalism was just unbelievable. I'm not going to tell a lot of stories because they have much better stories and very direct, but the response from many emergency service providers and the various entities that supported this community in this area get through this is remarkable, and the recovery is not as front and center on everyone's radar screen, but it is remarkable as well, the collaboration that's going on between various communities. So I'm glad that you suggested this topic, and I think it will be good to kind of capture some of these stories, so I appreciate it.
So let's start by just, again, setting the stage a little bit of kind of how the event unfolded. And for our viewers, you know, again, from all of you who got involved at different points along the way, talk about how that happens and when the different agencies get involved, and just share some of that perspective with us.
Well, the original call came in. It was, never forget, June 9th, a Saturday morning. And it originally came into, I believe, the Poudre Emergency Communications Center of the smoke report. We knew, all the fire officials knew of the fire dangers that were out there and had been for some time. It was obviously a very dry spring coming into it. It was a hot day, it was a windy day, and the initial report came in and it was immediately passed to Larimer County, and we dispatched Wrist Canyon Fire as the closest agency to where at least that report was at. You don't know what land it's on. And our emergency services folks responded at the same time. It takes a while. One of the difficulties in these remote areas is you'll get a call from someone who was on a cell phone that took quite some time to find a location to call, and they can tell you a general thing. From this location, I'm looking this direction and I see smoke. And they were on it very quickly, but the kind of day it was a weather-driven event, along with the fact that you had the dry conditions. That we knew from the get-go it was going to be challenging, and immediately upon discovering the fire, the mutual aid requests started coming in. We knew everyone was overwhelmed, and partnerships, obviously with Poudre Fire Authority, were extremely important, but all the other agencies that Tom and I work with as well. You just know what's going to happen. To be honest, I can tell you June 9th, but I'd actually back up 40 years. The cooperation that the community benefits from, and Tom and I benefit from, is based on relationships that started working together at least 40 years ago with these fire agencies. So that was the beginning, and when they immediately called in for air support, we knew it was going to be a heck of a fire. And that day, all that any of us could do was try to keep slightly ahead of it and get people out of the way. There really was no honest opportunity to suppress or direct the fire. It was really just keeping out of the way.
Yeah, now I want to build on what Justin was talking about those relationships that have been built over 40 years. We just closed out the Hewlett fire. In fact, it wasn't even, I don't even know if it had been declared controlled yet. I knew it was declared contained. There were still islands burning in the Hewlett fire, which also had an impact on Watershed as well. And fires like Hewlett, Crystal, you go back to Picnic Rock and just keep working your way back, even fires that are outside of Poudre Fire Authority's jurisdiction, where we're working together with emergency services from the county. All the players who are key to the expertise in the field are very common to each other. They know each other. They know who's going to be in charge. There's no question about that. The command and control lays right out. The strategy lays right out. And it's that experience that, although we did tragically lose one person, I think that experience and that ability to deploy rapidly, actually saved lives. And we know it saved property, although we lost so many homes and so many buildings. There were many victories that firefighters had where they set up defenses around a specific home and saved it, oftentimes taking some pretty significant risk to do it, but calculated risk because they knew the area. We had planned for these fires. We hadn't planned for them all at once. We had planned for fires in Risk Canyon, in Whale Rock, Stratton Park, Davis Ranch, Poudre Park, but we never planned for them all to happen within virtually a 48-hour period, because that's when it did most of its aggressive burning. So that work through the years prepared us to have a interagency event where all those agencies were strapped, but were able to give the best fight we could give with what we had till the federal resources could get here.
And Kevin, how about you? So there's this immediate emergency response that's going on, right? And people are focused on that protection of lives and property. At what point do you get concerned about the watershed and get engaged?
Well, two parts actually. Once a Type 1 team was called, Fort Collins Utilities, working collaboratively with Colorado State University, set up water supply, because we had an influx of a lot of men and women coming to fight the fire. So we actually were involved very early in the stage to supply water to the mobile kitchens, and also to the whole site at where they were based at on West LaPorte Avenue. From that point on, then we would get daily briefings. I worked closely with the sheriff, Chief DeMint, and other staff to look at the fire impact in terms of our watershed. One of the things that's unique in our area is we all live downstream. So if one can visualize a mountainside and that runoff, just like what happens in town with a rainstorm, that ends up into every one of those gullies, which eventually ends up into a watershed. Unfortunately, we had to go offline because of the Hewlett Gulch fire, and that Hewlett fire impacted our Cache La Poudre water supply. For our residents in Fort Collins, that's 50% in a typical year of our water supply. Approximately 15,000 acre-feet of water is used off the Cache La Poudre River. So the good news is we're already offline. We started to monitor it. The challenges were then to continually be updated and to start pre-planning as to what the scenarios might be, particularly given a drought, which has not only been throughout our region, but throughout the western part of the United States. So that's just some of the impact we had. And as we proceeded further into the fire, we were working with more and more agencies and continue to do so today.
So I've heard a couple of you mention some of the challenges, both in terms of knowing where things were coming from, and then information flow. The collaboration is very strong, and in an event of this magnitude, information flow is a challenge, right? I worked in the information center for a while, and there were all sorts of questions coming in. So talk, if you will, a little bit about how that works. I mean, the city is getting questions. How do you all both share information amongst agencies and then with other stakeholders?
Yeah, with dozens of agencies involved at fairly large levels. One of the things that we've learned over time, and wildfires teach us how to bring these together, is we had what we called a JIC, or a Joint Information Center. And one of the unusual things that we did in this area that isn't typically done is that overhead team that Kevin spoke by, the federal entities that bring them in, they typically run communications. Based on the experiences we've had together, we wrote it into the agreement that Larimer County would oversee that. Part of what we knew was we knew our citizens, we knew our community, and we knew we were best equipped, we as several entities, to communicate with them. So it was located through the sheriff's office at our emergency operations center, and it was staffed with personnel from a lot of different agencies around the area that put folks in. So we focused on the ability to do phone calls. During that period, over 21,000 emergency notifications via basically what we typically referred to as the reverse 911 system went out. Over 20,000 phone calls were answered by employees or volunteers of the various agencies. Social media was used, I think, like it never has been in this area before. About 440 tweets and Facebook posts to put information out, to clarify if there was bad information out there. And then typically we do press conferences to communicate, but Tom and I worked together with the overhead team and with the other fire chiefs. And we did, in the beginning, 4 briefings a day for citizens. And we stood there, we were committed. We told them from the get-go, we'll be here till every question's answered. At least we've taken them. We'll bring that information back. So that kind of communication was tremendous. And I have to say the teamwork in communication, other fires in our area at the same time didn't enjoy that. There were entities fighting to communicate. We all came together with it and made sure we could answer. And the focus that we had first was the affected residents. What's it going to take to communicate with them first and foremost? We've pushed them out of their homes. Second was this regional and local community. The national audience we set to the side. It really wasn't important to our community whether NBC, CBS, and ABC had coverage of our fire. And Tom can speak more to the communication.
Yeah, first, it's a chance for me to publicly thank Justin for his leadership in that realm, because we watched other fires, not only in Colorado, but from around the country, and watching people struggle to get information out, and you could see struggles for power in the press conference. That didn't happen here. Through Justin's leadership, we met with the overhead team. We would meet before press conferences, and the theme of those meetings wasn't, okay, what are you going to say? What are you going to? The theme of the meetings was the citizens come first. Those people who are evacuated are the priority, that they need to know what's happening in their neighborhood, and that they're going to be the ones that see their homes first, whether it's there or not. They're not going to watch it on some TV in a motel room where they've been evacuated to. So the empathy was shared throughout the team, and I think from talking to people and debriefing with citizens, that empathy was felt, and I think that was critical because these people are, some of them were out of their homes for up to 3 weeks, and it was, the focus had to be on them, and then I felt the second focus was on the firefighters, because we'd always tell the citizens, the firefighters are asking if you're okay, and they were. The firefighters are out there on the line saying, tell people we're working hard to save their homes. And the people from the community would say, tell the firefighters we love them.
Okay.
That's the way you guys lead. I love that. The communications were a great reflection of the types of leaders that you guys are. That's why I said early on, you could just, you, Tom, when I run into you, you were exhausted physically. You were, stuff has an impact on leaders, and I love that the two of you really. I mean, it's a terrible situation, but your character came out. Your commitment to people and why you do this stuff. And so, for me, that was one of the big takeaways from this, that you represent organizations that actually care about the work, and it showed. We had a crisis situation, and that's what came out, and that's what people saw, and it's a great thing to be part of that kind of community that has that, that kind of commitment to just the passion for public service and helping, and so it's genuine. You guys can't make that up. We get in stress situations, the real you come out, and it did, and I really appreciate that about you guys. I think the community benefits from it.
And I would offer there are 3 people that would be great seats at this table, and unfortunately, other jobs keep them away with the other fire chiefs. It was really unprecedented. Every day, there was 5 of us together. The chief from Poudre Canyon, the chief from Risk Canyon, the chief from Glacier View. We all came together, and it was each day we brought those things. And there was never a split in the group as we came up. In fact, one of the things we realized, it was a tough situation, and we used a little bit of humor with folks in an appropriate level. As we became a family with those thousands of people evacuated, we gathered at the ranch. And I got to plug the folks at the ranch and Bob Herfelt. They treated every one of those evacuees as a guest, not an evacuee, a guest there. They had everything they needed. But as we came up on stage in those stinky yellow shirts every day, there was a little bit of humor in it. And we learned, Tom and I are brothers in ways I never could have imagined, as are the other fire chiefs. We went through it. And I can tell you as well, I appreciated Tom's support. There were times of both of us. There was that time at some point, either one of us looked like we were about to just fall over. The other one was there to hold him up, as the other chiefs were.
Yeah, the other chiefs had a critical point, and that group of 5, the fire had seemingly rested for a while till it hit Glacier View. And with those meetings, if Risk Canyon was the one that had to share with their citizens who had lost their homes, and it wasn't the day that Poudre Fire was going to share, we all made sure we were there to support Chief Gant. We all made sure we were there to support Chief Neiswinder when they said that, when we were reporting on Glacier View homes. Everybody's hands were in the middle of the circle, and we were all gathered around. And I think that reflected in the news conferences, and it reflected in the meetings with the citizens throughout the fire. I think it was felt through fire camp, and I know that Bill Honenberg, the incident commander, felt that. In fact, at a recent overview that he did at CSU, he reported on that the local support made the fire much easier for them to fight.
That's great. I want to fast forward a little bit to where we are now and talking about some of the recovery issues that are ongoing. Kevin, I'm going to ask you to start out by talking from really the water side, what some of those challenges are and what the current situation.
Certainly. Before there was full containment on the fire, on an event this large, typically the Natural Resources Conservation Services, which is a component of the United States Department of Agriculture, has a team called the BEAR team. That's short for the Burn Area Emergency Response Team. Their job is a group of cross-functional professionals that actually analyze the impact of a forest fire on watersheds as well as other issues such as ecology, environmental concerns, etc. The BEAR team started their work prior to containment of the fire and at the first part of July, and finished their report within 7 days, which is actually a requirement of the NRCS, and that's again abbreviation for the Natural Resource Conservation Services. That report then outlined what the severity of this fire was throughout the 87,000 acres approximately that was burned. And of that, there was a great majority that was burned that was U.S. forest land. There was some state forest land, and then over 30,000 acres of private land was burned in this fire. They also ascertained what the actual burn area was in terms of severity, from a low to a high burn area. And they do that through mapping, and they also use infrared photography through flyovers on the fire. And from that then, they can look at the topography or the various mountain slopes that we have and start to look at what it will take to recover for this fire. So that work was completed at the 1st of July, and immediately another cross-functional group of individuals in Fort Collins, using scientists, firefighters, and others, began meeting on a routine basis to ask the question, how can we reduce the impact of this fire to downstream users? Considerations, for example, of fallen timber that might get down and clog a culvert, which could then cause flooding, which could then cause another emergency for Larimer County Emergency Services. So they don't look just at water quality. It actually is a holistic view of the various negative effects of a fire of this magnitude. Utilities was very much a part of that, and as Fort Collins Utilities, we're one of 3 agencies that utilize the Cache-la-Poudre River for a key water supply. We also were very fortunate to have Horsetooth Reservoir, and we were on Horsetooth Reservoir during the duration of the fire. However, we were able to use water from 2011 and carry that water over. As we move forward, water managers need to be looking at demands, and they also need to be looking at climate conditions. And that's what we continue to do as of today. We're looking ahead to the year 2013, and we're asking ourselves, will we be able to use the Cache-la-Poudre River at all times? Lessons learned: every time we have a rainstorm, which happened in mid-July, the sediment that is on these exposed slopes is actually working its way into the river, turning the river black, which many citizens observed in the month of July. And even recently, in the last few weeks, a small amount of rainfall has caused issues with erosion onto Highway 14. So it affects transportation, it affects our county, it affects things like structure of the slopes, and all of these various elements need to be continually monitored, which is what we are doing from the City of Fort Collins standpoint.
So Kevin, snow is good, rain is bad.
That is correct. At the lower elevations, an ideal situation for the year 2013 would be to have plenty of snow high, not so much low. Okay to have occasional snow, which we typically get here. It's the duration and the impact on these high severity burn areas. And if you can visualize, the ash just simply runs off into our water supply. So we are hoping that Mother Nature will be kind in 2013. However, we'd prefer not to have these erratic, rapid storms.
So real heavy rainfall is not good because it's going to wash it down into the various water streams and ultimately the river.
That is correct. And as a utility, our primary emphasis is on public health and safety for our community. So we obviously want to have water available at all times that meets all local, state, and federal regulations, which Fort Collins Water does and will continue to meet those standards. And don't forget that water supply is also available for firefighters 24/7 at any time. So we really serve two main functions in a community, and we must assure that we meet all of those at all times.
So I think, part of what you did was help to just explain the scope of what goes on after a fire as well, and how many implications there are. So help me understand kind of the cost of an event like this, and who bears the brunt of that cost. Is it at our local agency level? Are there federal reimbursements? How does that all play out?
Can I just tell you it's complicated?
You can.
Actually, Kelly, it really depends. There's two parts. One is the suppression, the firefighting. The second is the recovery, and Kevin can talk more on recovery issues. But on the suppression, it varies so much because even a standard fire, if it's on federal lands and private or state lands, at the sheriff's office, we're the ones that have the negotiation with our federal counterparts, usually the Forest Service here, who pays what percentages. We have what we call a cost share agreement. We do them on every fire, how we split those out. And from there, we work with the state of Colorado because Larimer County belongs to the Emergency Fire Fund, which covers costs on fires or helps with costs that exceed our capability to handle financially. That kicked in. On this one, because of the scope, FEMA money's kicked in. So, while there's a significant bill on this, because we've planned those and worked them and people know how to work that paperwork, for those suppression pieces, they know how it all comes through. And it's with the FEMA component, we're probably not going to know for a year or two what was paid for by who. Bills can take a couple of years to get processed through.
So Sheriff, just for clarification, significant equals millions of dollars. So if there are folks who are watching might not know really what you meant by that, the putting out the fire cost millions of dollars. Recovering and helping the watershed or the landscape reestablish and ensuring that when we pick this glass up and it's full of Fort Collins water, that it's drinkable, that costs millions of dollars as well. So we're not talking about, and I want to clarify because sometimes when we say a lot, some people might think that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, both in terms of putting it out and I think, Kevin, you've told me that the watershed issue could be a 10+ year issue. And so just...
No, I think that's a good assessment. And last I saw, it was somewhere in the $20 million range for the suppression.
I think it's gone over 30 million.
It's over 30 by
suppression alone.
Just suppression.
Just the suppression piece.
And what do you...
We're anticipating cost of $10 million relative to water quality at this time.
That does not speak to private property impacts.
No.
That doesn't speak to damage to public lands. So it's, like I said, I mean, it's tens of...
And it takes a long time, you're right, to bring all those costs in.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, again, it speaks to the importance of the pre-planning, right? One of the things that has been a theme through today is the importance of the pre-planning and the relationships in advance. So we, unfortunately, are already near the end of our time, so I'm going to ask just quickly for each of you to share with us kind of one final thought or most important takeaway you had from the High Park fire experience. And Sheriff Smith, I'm going to start with you.
The thing that comes to me is that preparation, having the kind of personnel that are capable and willing to step out, capable of doing it, take the risk, and the partnerships. When you're standing, I stood the first night in Poudre Canyon with a wall of flame, knowing those that came to help us would be there and competent and capable to do that. That was the payoff for us. It really was.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you for being here today. Kevin?
I would have to say the men and women who both fought the fire and now in the recovery stage of Larimer County are just committed, outstanding individuals who will continue to serve our citizens well. I'm so proud to be able to work with the sheriff and Chief DeMint's team and others, and we will continue to do that. But it is a great feeling for both collaborating and knowing that you have someone you can work with to solve problems. We have a huge amount of problems to solve in recovery, but the great feeling is we've got a great group of individuals who are dedicated to his or her job.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chief DeMint?
Mine would be there's a group of people that we rarely thank in this, and that's the community. One of the things that was really cool is when the fire was at its highest point, and all the crews would come back to fire camp out on LaPorte, out at the Armory at 7, and so they all had to come on down Overland Trail, and there was this tunnel of people out there holding up signs and waving American flags. That was just the support that the firefighters got was just unbelievable. And that's the community. The community realized the crisis and realized where the support should go. Very, very few complaints came to my phone. And that just shows the resolve of this community where we gathered around each other and demonstrate why this community is special.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Darin?
Yeah, so I remember on Saturday morning I was in Greeley for one of my son Jacob's baseball game, and it was mid-morning, and I called Chief DeMint and said, Tom, what's the smoke up on the mountain up there? And he was in Greeley as well, and called me back in a few minutes and said, you know, we know what's going on, you know, we're taking a look at it. And for the next couple hours, I watched this smoke go from a little sort of smoke stream to a significant smoke stream that was heading east towards Greeley, and so from Greeley I could see that, and it just exploded, to use your words and the fire words. The fire just exploded, and so watching it was just incredible, actually seeing that, and we had been briefed about the danger of fire up in that. You know, we'd had already history that summer, and then a couple weeks earlier, and so that was very impressive. The other thing we haven't talked about here is congressional support. Our congressional delegation at the federal level was phenomenal, and they still are working on our behalf to try and get more federal resources, and that's a big deal. These multi tens of millions of dollar bills, the more help we can get from our federal support, the legislators, they've been great to work with. So you guys, I've already said it too many times, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate your leadership. I've been so impressed, and you know, your organizations and Kevin, what we're doing in terms of recovery is remarkable work, and you know, on behalf of the city of Fort Collins, we just really, really appreciate what you all have done and your teams that you're working with. Thank you.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the community, I know they thank you as well. So thanks for joining us. That concludes this edition of City at a Glance.